Aloha. Welcome to American Issues Take One. I'm Tim Apicella, your host, and today's title is Trump's Gong Show Revival, his cabinet and staff picks. You know, Trump's cabinet staff picks are coming in at a very rapid pace. The qualifications for the office of AG versus Matt Gaetz selection is akin to the fox guarding a henhouse. Gaetz, accused of statutory rape, sexual trafficking of a minor, and paying for sex events, is slated for the top cop job, the Attorney General's position. Trump is flooding the Senate confirmation process with so many unqualified and morally flawed nominees, it's easy to assume it's a planned strategy on his part. The others, like Tulsi Gabbard for the National Intelligence Agency, known to rattle off Putin talking points at the onset of the Ukraine invasion, and Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, also accused of drugging and raping a married woman in Las Vegas, paying her off, and extracting a non-disclosure agreement. This is a long list, and then we'll stop there. To talk about this list and Trump's staff picks, I have with me my esteemed guest, Chuck Crumpton, my other esteemed guest, Ben Davis, and Jay Fidell. Jay, let me ask you this. What do you think of the staff pick, and do you find any of them troublesome, which I know there's an answer there somewhere? And if you do, why do you find them troublesome?
How much time do you have?
We have 28 minutes.
I think it's worth dividing the first round from the second round. Guy's been watching, he came out with a bunch initially, and now he's in his second round. The first round were consistent with the dead cat story about trying to get everybody upset. Matt Gaetz was obviously a provocative appointment. And by the way, what is going on here? He was just elected a week ago. So now all of a sudden, 2 months before he takes office, he's completely dominating the headlines every single day with these potential appointments. And Joe Biden, who? Joe Biden isn't getting any press at all. Anyway, so Matt Gaetz, terrible pick. Pete Hegseth it's ridiculous. I don't know if you saw the photo that's been circulated of him with his shirt off. He's covered with tattoos, and they're tattoos that they're extreme right tattoos. They're extreme Christian national tattoos all over his body. When you look at him that way, you see somebody far worse than a Fox News host. There's no way that he could handle that job, or that the people in DOD would respect him. No way. Of course, Tulsi Gabbard, we know Tulsi Gabbard. She was actually, the councilwoman for my neighborhood. And you couldn't find her. You couldn't reach her. She was into power. Look what happened. Director of Intelligence, give me a break. Terrible, provocative appointment. And the Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy efficiency team, that is terrifying, because you know where they're coming from. Anyway, then you have a second round. Sean Duffy for transportation, Linda McMahon, education, Howard Lutnick, commerce. Howard Lutnick is the chair of his transition team, And my favorite of all is Mehmet Oz, who's gonna oversee Medicare, Medicaid, and Obamacare. Is that terrifying? I mean, and there's more too, of course, but there's a second round that is, in many ways worse, but in some ways more acceptable. And the question I put to all of you is, what does this tell us? What do these appointments and the sequence of these appointments tell us? The evolution of his, standards for appointment, even over 1 week. What does it tell us? What is his plan? Why do the shakeup? Why, appoint these horrendously unqualified people? What does he mean to do?
That's a great question. I suppose we'll dive deep in it very soon. But I want to go to you, Chuck, and I want to ask you the exact same question. What do you think about the picks? And of those picks, which to you are perhaps the most troublesome? And why is that?
The response is the same as Jay's, kind of how long do you have? How much time do you have? Because there's so many things wrong with it. But
Now about 23 minutes.
yeah, well, hey, I don't want very much of that for this. I think one of the things that is most troublesome is the lack of any respect for qualities that were once thought to be essential to public service leaders: integrity, morality, independence from corruption, um, independent critical thinking and action. I don't see that in any of his proposed appointees. And that's exactly the point. They're not just clowns, they're toadies. So we'll see what happens, because there have to be some Republican senators who are talking with each other and trying to figure out, how do we form some kind of coalition, some kind of alliance that is not subject to wanton, willful destruction by the Trump MAGA crowd when we rein in these appointments of utterly corrupt, incompetent, completely dependent people. What do you do with it?
Thank you, Chuck. To no surprise here, Ben, same question. Of the nominations that Trump has come up with, which do you find the most troublesome, and why?
Well, as I'm listening to Jay and to Chuck and you, there was a thought that came to my mind, is that the level of mediocrity of the entire group, and we haven't even mentioned RFK in this, RFK Jr., but the level of mediocrity in this group as compared to every cabinet or high level appointments I can remember back to 76, it's just like levels of lower, right? And there was a part of me that started to think that maybe this narrow little group is all makes up the only people who would be willing to be part of his administration. That there may have been lists that they had, and they talked to people, and the people are like, no, I got to go shopping, or no, the people pass on being, because the level. I mean, this is like the third level team or fourth level team in terms of first rate people, and there, why would there be in there? Well, you take for education, Linda McMahon. Apparently, her husband is under investigation by the Attorney General's office for some kind of sex trafficking in WWE, right? So yeah, she gets in there because that'll help to limit anything that happens with regards to her husband. You've got all the Russia friendly types, right? The Russia lovers, you'll call them that. And then you have the so-called tough China folks. But my personal feeling is that that's just to sort of encourage the Chinese to be more, pay into the corruption. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So it's very disturbing. There's one person we haven't mentioned. This guy who's supposed to head up ICE, named Homan. Okay, I watched him last night on Fox, and one of the things that I found really disturbing about him is his really intense brutality about what he's getting ready to do. And he, talking about who they were going to go after, and it's just a level of brutality. And I think around him, he's going to make sure he has people like him who like to inflict pain and who want to do that. The other thing I just finally want to leave it with this point, which is that many people, I think, are feeling fear right now. Okay. And I think that is an intentional emotion we are being encouraged to have that is being manufactured in us. Remember, they're not in power. They are coming in power January 20th, but they're setting us up to be fearful of them so that we will be compliant with whatever they do. And as you can see, when what's the folks at Morning Joe go bend the knee, when the Washington Post go bend the knee, when Los Angeles Times goes bend the knee, it's all about them being made to feel fearful. And so this is a conscious manufactured effort to turn us into all kinds of fearful people. And we have to be aware that that's what they're doing to us. And I hope that by being aware of it, we would be able to start to say, I understand how I'm being manipulated and how I have to deal with that manipulation that's trying to be done to me.
You know, let me ask you this, because I've been thinking about this, and it seems to me that Donald Trump, again, is implementing a climate of fear so early on. But also, I think what he's trying to do with the Senate, particularly the Republican senators, is that if I get to compromise on morality, if I can get them to compromise on their ethics and pass these candidates, these nominees like Matt Gaetz and others, because they have a history of some doing some really bad things. That's the start. That's the start of my administration. Because once I get people to compromise their ethics and morals, the rest is easy for what I ask them to do and vote for in the future. Your thoughts?
If I could jump in, I'd say absolutely. It is about part of this is about making people compromise any sense of morality that they have because he's a transactional guy. Their morals don't play at all into anything that he's trying to do. And you can always find willing people who want to have power, who will try to please the boss. We've all seen that in our life. People who will do the most horrendous things because it gets them more power, more money, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what he's playing on. And the thing that's a little sad is I don't think that it's realistic to expect Republicans in the Senate to stand in his way. I don't expect anyone to stand in his way because of this sense of fear that they seem to have about him and his base. It's the entire sort of political class, business class. I don't see any of them really having the courage to stand up and say no. They're just not that. They're not that kind of people.
And the weapon of fear, Tim, that Ben illuminates and Jay alludes to, is the critical centerpiece, because a study recently cited pointed out that subjected to fear on a repeated, incessant basis for a period of 2 months, people lost all allegiance to truth, psychological effect of it, and the behavioral.
Jay, you just heard Ben say that Donald Trump's attempt here is a climate of fear. What do you think Trump's strategy is, or is there a strategy, or is he just a true believer that these are the guys that are going to be the most loyal, and that's my only criteria for the selection of all these names for cabinets and staff? What do you think? Is there a strategy behind this or not?
Absolutely. Reminds me of Anne Applebaum's article in The Atlantic a couple of years ago, where she demonstrated that people in Eastern Europe gave up their interest in having democracy or independent thinking in favor of fear. And that was what the Russians wanted from them and got from them. And P.S. among the Russians, were people just like Putin. Fear leads to power. And so I take Ben's comment as really the driving point here. So what does it tell us? This is something we should talk about today, as I mentioned. We should talk about the evolution, the plan as it unfolds. We should talk about the fear that he's generating. And Ben and I both listened to a New York Times daily podcast yesterday, which had a bunch of people from various places in the country who said, and women who said that they were marching back in 2017 and thereafter but they would not march now. They were not only tired, but they were drained. And given what happened on election day, which is incomprehensible to them, they weren't planning to march again. They were just going to be on the sidelines. And I think they were an interesting sample of a much larger group that feels the same way. So when you have the fear and you telegraph that you're finding and looking for increased power, you're actually depressing people from participating in the process, either the democratic process or the protest process. And that's what we have. And I think that's part of his plan. You shake people up with these outrageous appointments that are not only unqualified, but scary, sinister in themselves. And people, even in advance of his swearing in, his inauguration, they say, "Oh my God, what is going to happen to us?" He's really sending a bunch of messages. In terms of the individuals, I mean, they're scary. Gates is really scary. Hegseth is really scary. Elon Musk, I mean, from what he says, and Vivek Ramaswamy is scary. Tulsi Gabbard, and thank you for mentioning Homan, man, because Homan is also scary. Just look at him as he appears on television. I wouldn't want to meet that guy in a dark street. And the rest of them, maybe they have some credentials, but they're all Trump credentials. They were made by Trump. And now they're gonna perform like circus animals. They're going to perform for him. So at the end of the day, what can you say about what happens in 6 months? The country will change. The lives of everyone in it will change. Our institutions will change. And in that regard, I just want to add that it's not only these appointments that are troublesome. He had a bill to terminate confirmations. That is incredible, and the first time ever. And hopefully they stopped him, and they will continue to stop him on that kind of bill. But I'm not sure that we've heard the last of it. Remember his style about doubling down. He wants to submit a bill to allow him to select nonprofits to terminate at will, because he doesn't like the way they part their hair. He is trying to terminate funding to PBS and NPR. That's only the beginning of his attack on the press. To say nothing of these outrageous plans for deportation and tariffs to wreck our economy and our international relations. If he gets these appointees, the inmates will be running the asylum. And if you feel the noose is tightening, it's for a good reason. This is going to, at least in the prospect, create chaos. And it is going to the chaos itself is going to give him more power and lead to dictatorship. So that's why we should cover it. Now, in terms of the individuals, so the dead cat theory works. You disrupt the meeting with impossible possibilities like a dead cat on the table. I don't think Matt Gaetz is going to get confirmed. Trump, persists, but I don't think he's going to get confirmed. And Hegseth shouldn't be confirmed. And Tulsi Gabbard shouldn't be confirmed. And Homan shouldn't be confirmed. And Elon Musk and Ramaswamy, who are they anyway? They're not even, being suggested for a real cabinet position, although Musk follows Trump around like a puppy dog. But the problem is, if you assume that some of them are not going to get confirmed, you have to assume that some of them will get confirmed, because the Senate will get tired of failing to confirm. They can't fail to confirm all of them. And I think that's part of his strategy. So a couple of them are so bad, they don't get confirmed, and that's good. But the rest of them, or some remaining group, will get confirmed. And then we'll have what he wanted, the inmates running the asylum. By the way, if they don't get confirmed, he'll come up with other names. And my suggestion to you is they will be at least as bad or even worse, sort of getting even with us, getting even for those who voted against confirmation. So it isn't over. He is looking for a cabinet that will do his bidding, that will do all the things he threatened in his campaign, and that will change the country for the worse and change our relationship with the world for the worse. This has all the elements of the realization of his threats and promises. And boy, are we in for it. Strap in.
Right. Oh, by the way, Jay, that Holman, if I recall, in the first administration was the chief architect of separation of the children from their parents' arms at the border, the southern border.
He was.
Yeah.
He was. And what's worse is if you look at him presenting his views, Ben was referring to that. He's really a mean guy. He's a mean, tough bugger. And he is going to be mean with everybody he deals with. And I wouldn't want to be in the line for deportation because he will show no mercy. He is the wrong kind of person for the job, for any job in government.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you, Jay. Chuck, if Trump is successful of getting some of these nominations around the Senate through the process known as recess appointments, does that not, in a way, pick the wings out of the Constitution, since that's a primary Senate responsibility? And do you think he will be successful in recess appointments, or will it be the lower level appointments versus like a cabinet pick? I heard a senator today, a Republican senator, say there's no way a cabinet pick will be selected through a recess appointment.
I think Jay has hit on it, is that Trump's a bully. His one-trick pony show is by fear, by threats. And the threat to the senators who oppose any of his picks is exactly what Jay alluded to. Okay, we're going to be here until you finally approve one of my picks, because I'm just going to keep trotting out people that are more and more and more corrupt, obedient, and unacceptable and unqualified. So if you think this one's bad, disapprove them and wait till you see who I put up next.
Yeah.
At some point, people cave to that. Or it gets de facto control through minions in other positions that essentially dispossess the existing cabinet level position holders of any authority and power at all. So he has a lot of techniques and strategies to bully and threaten and intimidate resistant senators into agreeing to his picks. Barely write off any of them at this point, as ridiculous, as ludicrous as RFK and Gates and Hegseth and Gabbard are.
So
and
do you think,
Ramaswamy, for criminy's sake, how do you reduce Social Security? Those of you whose Social Security number ends in an odd number, you're out. Want to reduce it 50% more? Those of you whose Social Security number begins with an odd number, you're out. You've now eliminated 75% of Social Security. He actually stated that to the press.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, so is the strategy to weaken the Constitution and the process that the Senate has in their far as their duty, or is it the strategy to make the senators heel to his wishes moving forward, or is it a combination of both or none?
They're not inconsistent. Those are two sides of the same coin.
If I could jump in, one of the things that I think is part of the strategy that I'm actually expecting is in Article 1, I think Section 9 of the Constitution. It says that you can suspend habeas corpus if there is invasion. So the argument will be all these foreigners are invasion, and therefore I can suspend habeas corpus with regards to them, and also using that old 18th century law that was used for the Japanese internments. So I think that we're going to see that kind of what is called state of exception, right? So you see, we're here in a sort of regular order situation. Then you declare it's a state of exception where none of the rules that apply under regular order are only the rules you think need to apply under regular order as the leader are the ones that apply, that are actually there. I think that's where he's trying to move to. And but if I can say a couple things that I think make me optimistic, if in a weird kind of way. Okay. The one of the things is that the notion of meritocracy in the United States has now been completely destroyed by his nominations, right? Remember the old meritocratic thing, the best and the brightest kind of notion? This, I don't care, anybody in America cannot seriously think there is any meritocracy in any of these appointments. I mean, they are so appalling. And I think that's a good thing for us, but it's also a dangerous thing for all those people who bought into meritocracy. So then you sort of like the revealing the face of something that is very dark, right? Okay. The other thing that I really don't know why I have this optimism is that I was thinking about those people that Jay talked about who were giving up on NPR. Well, they fought back in 2016, 17, 18, and they're exhausted now. They're human. That doesn't mean that there aren't other people today who are willing to take up the battles that need to be fought on these things. Last night, in the middle of the night, I came up with a new T-shirt that I want to make, and hopefully will get done, which says on the front, "Pray for foreigners," and on the back says "American Solidarity." Right? Because why? Because when I lived in France for 17 years, there were anti-immigrant things done for both legal and undocumented people, and it touched me as an immigrant that those French people, thousands, would be in the street in support of me, right? And so it's like a paying forward thing in my head. That's my thing, of sort of trying to say that no, that we're going to bring some light into this. We're not going to be scared by bullies. We're not going to be they can't flood the zone enough because we're the light. We're going to move it to the right place. And the thing is, though, is that there's always these efforts that we're going through, which is to try to get us to bend the knee to them, to acquiesce. And you either acquiesce or you resist. And I think that there's at least now that we see that, in fact, he didn't win more than 50% of the vote. People are starting to say, "Oh, he didn't get the big number over. He didn't get the majority." And you can feel. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. You can feel the resistance coming and saying, "This is so crazy. It's not possible in America. Not possible in America." Now, I recognize there are a lot of people who love this stuff, right? That's their weird, unfortunate state. Okay, but I think there are a number of people say it's not possible in America to have this kind of nonsense.
Well, and I think as Jay, or as you said it, early on, is the climate of fear. And so thank you, Ben. Jay, to you. This morning I heard Adam Kinzinger. Remember, he was the former House Republican representative that got shown the door basically the same time Liz Cheney was shown the door. They dared speak out against Trump, and I think they voted for one of the impeachment initiatives. So the question is this. They've already implied or explicitly stated that if Trump doesn't get his way, that they will be primaried. And here's what Kissinger said this morning. He said, look, every day there's 3 or 4 reasons why you should be primaried, because these things come up all the time, every day. So if you fall into that, you will have no say into what your constituents want. So he said, you might as well be independent and vote your independent way, and vote that also in line with your constituents. So do you think that tactic, which has worked for years with Trump, certainly during his first administration, do you think that tactic of threatening the senators if they don't vote for his picks, they will be primaried? Does that strategy work for Trump?
It doesn't work for Kinzinger. I think he will try. I think the playbook is going to stay the same about threatening people, especially Republicans in Congress. But I have a point of optimism too, Ben. You're not the only one who has a little glimmer of optimism here, not a big glimmer. It's like that T-shirt, it says one thing on the front and the other on the back. My optimism point is that if he gets really crazy, and he is getting really crazy and threatening, people are going to get tired of that. They're tired of him, just as those women on the podcast were tired of going out with the futility of a protest in the street and the risk of facing the United States Army, like in Kent State. having our own Americans shoot at us and kill us. And by the way, this also goes to your point about the Constitution, Ben. His argument is that this is an invasion, and therefore it allows him to call up the army, no domestically, and fight domestic protesters. So, but I think people are going to get tired of that. This is a balance. It's a tipping point. They're going to get tired. They're going to get tired in the Congress. Even the Republicans will get tired of it. I think we saw that in the Jim Scott versus John Thune contest over this interim appointments bill, and the leader selecting the leader in the secret meeting and all that. So I think they're going to get tired of it. That's my point of optimism, and they're just going to turn off on him. He won't get what he wants because they'll be tired of it. And it's not because they're in a high moral place or a place of patriotism or democracy or even responding to their constituents. It's just a matter of fatigue. That's what it is. Okay. The other side of my T-shirt says, no, that's going to happen. One way or the other, he's going to have the inmates running the asylum. One way or the other, he's going to get exactly what he wants. All these people, including Kennedy, I forgot to mention Kennedy. What a shame, the legacy of Kennedy. What a shame. They're going to do all the destructive things he wants to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if you think you can enjoy buyer's remorse for having voted for him, it's much too late for that. So you may not be able to go out in the street. You may not be able to express yourself through the media because he is a media person and he is going to attack all the media. So his message gets out and theirs doesn't. I guarantee it. Wait 6 months or a year, you'll see what I mean. So the dark side of this, the pessimistic side, is that nobody is going to get out in the street again. Everybody's going to be fixed in fear, like the Morning Joe situation, where they kiss his ring, they magnetize themselves to be attracted like the moth to the flame to power, and they join up, or they get complacent where they weren't complacent before. That's the backside of the T-shirt.
Yeah, I'm not feeling a lot of optimism on that comment. But I'm sure there was one in there somewhere. Thank you, Jay.
But remember, Tim and Jay and Ben, as Jay just pointed out and Ben alluded to earlier, the margin, he didn't get the 50% plus popular vote margin. The margin in the Senate is far less than the number of Republicans who have already indicated we're not buying this. This is too far out. The margin in the House is also smaller than the number of Republicans who've gone. So this will unify Democrats in ways that nothing else ever has. A certain group of Republicans with Democrats in a way that nothing else has.
You know, it's been reported that Trump's on the phone, on a phone campaign. We've seen him do that before, getting people to heel and knuckle down on them. Is he successful in that, Chuck? Does he get these senators that have voiced some opposition? I mean, January is a long way off. We're only here in late November or mid-November. Does Donald Trump just wear them down and threaten them and install fear into these senators? Is he successful in that or not?
Well, the first test of that was actually his push of Rand Paul to take over as the Senate Majority Leader, which lost. And John Thune came in. And John Thune, on entering, made some very genuflecting comments toward Trump and his agenda and stuff like that. But that was a choice that Republicans made by secret vote. And they can do secret votes on a number of things. But it's going to become evident that there are some Republican senators and Republican House of Representatives congresspeople who are going to manifest some level of independence.
We've run out of time, so I want to go. Ben, I'm going to start with you with your last thoughts on Trump's picks for cabinet and staff.
It's a pitiful group, which suggests to me that he's not able to get quality people around him to work with them. And that will work to our benefit in this. Unfortunately, in the United States, we're going to go through some bad things that are going to happen that the incompetent are going to be incapable of dealing with. And that's going to be a huge problem for Trump.
Chuck, your last thoughts.
I think Ben and Jay are spot on. If you can imagine another pandemic of any kind happening during Bobby Kennedy's reign over health, or immigration disaster with horrible budget and economic impacts happening, because that's a huge, huge portion of our labor force during Homan's time and during the rest of Trump's administration. It's really easy to see how quickly and how extensively this could go wrong. And I think there are people in Congress, in the Senate, and in the House who are Republicans and who see that probability. What they will do in response to that, we'll have to see.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Jay, my co-host, the last word.
I'd like to think there will be more secret meetings where Trump can't get a handle on who voted for what, who voted against him. That will help. But remember that Matt Gaetz is famous for crashing secret meetings. As DOJ, he will do that, even if he's not DOJ. Well, he's no longer in the House. Remember that? Isn't that wonderful? He's not there. that's a point of optimism, Ben. I think that ultimately Trump is going to use his playbook. He's going to use the media. And a footnote to that is that after the election, the viewership of MSNBC, CNN, and Fox changed. And a lot of people, millions of people, migrated from MSNBC and CNN to Fox, and they're watching Fox now. What does that tell us? It's about the moth and the flame. It's about trying to migrate to the power. There's a fair possibility we're going to see that in Congress too. I would like to think that Congress can find its proper groove on this, but I'm not optimistic about that either. So let me say that, I don't think there's going to be meaningful protests, or at least if there are protests, he will use the army to deal with that, which would be horrendous. I think he's going to follow through on his promises, especially including his promises in Europe. And one thing I might mention is that, that's up for grabs too, because I think Putin has been criticizing him lately on a couple of occasions. And maybe their relationship is not so strong as we thought. Maybe Trump is going to get ticked off at Putin, and who knows where that takes us. But in any event, he doesn't know how to do, international relations. And I think he's going to wreck our foreign relations with a number of countries, including allies, of course. So I'm not optimistic. I'm sorry. Balancing everything we've said, including your very, thoughtful points, Ben, I'm not optimistic. And what it means, my final thought here, Tim, is that there's more material for us to consider here on American Issues Take One than there has ever been before. It's a rich vein of material, and we can and should cover it going forward as it evolves, because it will be very, very threatening.
All righty. I'll chime in here and say that I agree with each and every one of you that Donald Trump is trying to install the great climate of fear for the voting population towards the House of Representatives, towards the Senate. That's what he's good at, trying to install fear. That's what bullies do. But at the same time, I'm reminded of FDR. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. And with that, I'm Tim Apicella, your host for American Issues Take One. Join us next week. And until then, aloha.